Hi guys, hope everyone is well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So today I wanted to touch on what is, or not as what is better, but cardio or steps for fat loss, and just talk about the pros and cons of each, when you may want to implement a step goal or add in cardio to promote fat loss, and more on both topics. So jumping into the episode, so first of all we need to establish what each is. So cardio is basically when you elevate your heart rate for an extended period of time. And it could be anything from going to run, it could be Stairmaster, it could be seated bike, just any form of extended exercise where you're getting your heart rate elevated. Whereas steps, a bit different, it doesn't have to be for extended periods of time, your heart rate doesn't have to be at a certain level or in a certain zone, but it's just accumulating steps could be throughout the day, or could be implementing walks at different points of the day. Both are basically forms of energy expenditure. What I mean by that is both are ways to burn calories. And one isn't really superior to the other in terms of what you should do in a fat loss phase. They've got their pros and cons, which I'll jump into. So, in terms of when you may want to pick something like cardio, so there's not going to be any perfect time to implement it. It obviously depends on the individual, so I can't say, right, if you're dieting for this much weeks, put it in now or put it in then, or how often or how frequent to do it. I can't give you those set answers, sadly, but I'll of course try and break down my thoughts and some things to take into consideration. So if you are someone who likes the psychological aspect of doing 20 minutes cardio or something, and you believe it sets you up for the day, then it could be a good move to make in terms of implementing it into your day. Because some people have the mindset, if let's say they box off a cardio session in the morning, they're feeling like, right, I've already done that, I'm not putting that cardio to waste, I'm going to make sure the rest of my day's productive as well. It sets them up for almost success and puts them in a good mindset for the day. And again, some people might not have this benefit. And something else to consider is what's your work like. So if someone is, let's say they work long hours, they might not be able to fit cardio in. It might be a bit hard to implement it without sacrificing other aspects of their day. So that is something to consider. The benefit of cardio is it does allow more activity in a shorter period of time, or basically allow you to burn more calories in a shorter period of time. For example, getting your heart rate nice and high on the stairs is going to burn more calories than doing a slow, leisurely walk. And considering it's a bit more time efficient, if let's say someone is got a desk job, they work quite long hours, so they don't have much time outside of work, they generally don't rack up a lot of steps at all, then cardio could be a good option. And the reason being is because it's going to be a more time efficient way to get them in. And they've not already got super high activity, so there's no reason why they can't do cardio and not really have much sacrifice to performance. And something else to consider is you can realistically, you can only put steps so high. So yes, you can keep increasing your step goal, but there comes a point where it's not so much detrimental, but you might as well just add in cardio if you're going to be doing a ridiculous amount of steps, and it will just allow you to again get done in a shorter period of time, which you could say would benefit your adherence or consistency to the plan. And it does boil down to what you are more likely to stick to. So again, common theme here in this podcast is consistency comes first. So if you're not going to be able to stick to something consistently, then you're not going to get results from it. And some people like doing it after a session. They don't mind doing cardio or steps after a session, so that could be a good way to implement some form, or one form, could be steps or cardio, and get it done. And the reason being is you're already on the go. If you've had a coffee or pre-workout beforehand, it's not as brutal getting your heart rate up, and it's easier to commit to. Whereas if let's say you have already trained and you do cardio later in the day, it's just pretty inconvenient for some. So yeah, the only thing I'd take into consideration if you're doing it after a session is I wouldn't do ridiculous amounts. So if, let's say, you're training legs and then you're doing 35-minute on the stairs, then that's probably not going to be great for your performance in the gym. And your overall, well, not even performance, more so your recovery, because that's the time where we want to ideally eat and rest. So I actually do cardio myself after my push sessions now. I'm doing cardio 4 times a week at the moment, and I am doing 35 minutes, so it is a decent period of time, especially after training, but I don't really have much other choice except to do it at that period. And as well as that, when I'm doing cardio after my session, I sip essential amino acids and highly branched cyclic dextrin, a carbohydrate powder, throughout my session. So it's not like I'm going absolute ages without food. So I'm sipping that throughout my session, I'm getting that finished by the time I'm done my compound movements. So I've still got that energy from that intra workout in my system, if that makes sense. And it's not been crazy long, so it's not as much of a worry. Whereas let's say instead of push only taking an hour and a half, being a relatively short session compared to the rest, let's say it was 2.5, and then after that I was doing 35 minutes cardio, and it was a good while before my session I had my pre-workout meal, and on top of that I didn't have an intra-workout drink, then you could say, right, you're getting into a territory where it's probably not great for you to recover, that sort of thing. But what I'm doing now I don't think is an issue. So in terms of when you could pick steps over cardio, where it could be applicable. So if cardio isn't enjoyable, then steps can be a good route to go down. Some people don't like being stuck in the 4 walls in the gym, being on a treadmill, being on a Stairmaster, being on a cross trainer, or whatever other cardio equipment you use. Some people would prefer to get outside, especially maybe if they work inside all day, and maybe it's just inconvenient going to the gym if, let's say, they're not training that day. So yeah, this could be a good example of when steps may be a good idea. And yeah, again, it depends what your current steps are at as well. Because if your steps are already pretty high, you might be like, oh god, I've got another 2,500 to do. Whereas they might just prefer going on a treadmill and form of cardio equipment and getting some cardio done. If, let's say, you don't have much or a time you can allocate towards cardio, and you do have wee parts in the day where you can get steps in, then it could be a better option, because it gives you more flexibility in the day. Because obviously doing cardio means you have to travel to the gym or have one at your house, whereas steps, you can do it whenever you want really, and you don't really need to be in a gym to do steps. And it can be good social wise if, let's say, you've got a partner or your friends, so you can still maybe see them, spend time with them, do things with them. Because usually when folk are dieting, they're a bit more restrictive, they're not quite living the same they were before, in terms of they might not be eating out as much or going out for drinks as much, because usually when people knuckle down a bit, it is during a dieting phase. So to keep that social interaction, to maintain those relationships and spend time with your partner or significant other, it can be a good idea to have a step goal, because you can go walks in nice places, country parks, that sort of thing, and just walk to the shops, and it's a bit less inconvenient, and it can just flow in your day a bit better, if that makes sense. And one of the other benefits to steps is it's less strenuous and less impactful on performance. So if, let's say, someone's doing 45 minutes on the stairs, that's going to be much more detrimental to their performance than doing, let's say, 10,000 steps a day, in my opinion. So that is something to consider. Again, if, let's say, you're doing none of one and doing the other a ton, for example, if you're not doing any steps throughout the day and then doing 45 minutes on the stairs in the morning, training after work, then it's becoming less of an issue because you're not doing any steps. But if, let's say steps were super high, cardio was super high, then it could be a bit more detrimental. But yeah, if you can, always split up your cardio, or not always, sorry. If you can, and it's not inconvenient to yourself, you don't mind it, it fits in your day well, and it means that you won't sacrifice performance, and always do cardio either after your session or when you are, or another point of the day. And the reason being is, if let's say we're going on the stairs for 30 minutes and beginning a leg day, how do you think that leg day is going to go? Do you think you're really going to be able to perform as best as possible after using your legs for 30 minutes doing cardio? Probably not. So that is something to consider. But yeah, for the most part, if you can get away with just doing steps and you prefer that, then there's no problem about doing so. It's like I've complete dieting phases before where I just done steps and they got on just fine. And in terms of when to add in either of the two, either more steps or more cardio, it's basically when your rate of loss slows down or stops. So if let's say you're not losing at a rate you'd like, then it can be a good way to just basically get you losing at a bit of a faster rate. Especially if you're someone who doesn't have super high food intake, then cardio or steps could be a better option. But yeah, don't be afraid to ramp them up early if you think you can stick to it. So with my clients, usually I'll just bang them straight on 10,000 steps if I believe they can stick to it and they've got no problems doing so. If let's say I'm not sure, then I might start them on a lower, more sustainable step count and then ramp it up. But there's no reason why you can't do a good 10,000 steps a day when you're starting a diet, because it's not going to be detrimental to your performance at all. Like I said, that combined with a lot of cardio could be, but steps alone is not going to be an issue, regardless of when you do it. But again, I'd just be mindful of not, let's say, doing 45 minutes, just walking to get steps in right after your session, because that's the time when we want to eat and recover. And when you are entering a dieting phase and when you are looking to lose fat, or whatever your goal is in terms of losing weight, then what I recommend is a faster rate of loss is appropriate at the start. So there's no reason why you can't hammer it a bit at the start in terms of, like I said, getting your steps up, getting some cardio in at the start. There's no reason why you can't. And the reason being is, when we think about what happens when we're dieting, is when we are starting a dieting phase, we've got more energy availability from fat. What I mean by this is, let's say when you start your dieting phase, you've got more body fat on you than at the end of it. So that means your body's got a bit more energy to tap into from fat. Whereas at the end of a dieting phase, let's say you've been doing a dieting phase for, let's say, 20 weeks. At the end of that, by the 20-week mark, you are going to be quite tired because you've got that dieting fatigue. You've been losing weight, which is basically slowly starving you of energy. At the end of the day, you're slowly starving yourself. Obviously, you're going to survive, but sometimes you can be a bit more draggy, a bit less energy at the end. So that's the time where you want the higher food. You want to approach weight loss at a slower rate of loss for both muscle retention and your overall energy and performance. So you can get away with being a bit more aggressive at the start. It's like you don't really feel like you're dieting the first few weeks. And why is that? Because you've just went into a deficit. So your body doesn't instantly go into a calorie deficit and then get tired. It takes time. It takes a while to feel the effects of dieting. So that's why I like to be more aggressive to the start. And also you're less likely to lose muscle, because let's say you go from 180 pounds to 175 pounds. That 5 pounds isn't going to be that detrimental to performance because you're at your peak weight. For example, if you were already super lean and started at super lean and then lost 5 pounds, it might be a bit different, but most people aren't. So yeah, the first 5 pounds isn't an issue at all. So yeah, be aggressive, because usually people have longer to diet than they actually think they do. What I mean by this is, you might think, right, I've got around 10 pounds to lose. After that, should have abs, should be super lean, and look brilliant. Whereas in reality, you usually have more than you think. So always overestimate how much you've got to lose. So if you think you've got to lose £10, you probably need to lose 20. And something that I saw someone post about is whatever you think you need to lose in kilograms, you probably need to lose that. Whatever you think you need to lose in pounds, you probably need to lose that in kilograms, which I thought was quite interesting, and I think it does hold a lot of truth. And also, there's no point taking ages with your dieting phase if you don't need to, because again, puts you in a more restrictive place. You're probably not going to feel the best, and you want to enjoy your life potentially. So yeah, be aggressive at the start and get it over and done with, and get the first bit of body fat off, if that makes sense, instead of messing about. So to conclude this episode, in terms of picking steps or picking cardio, it comes down to adherence. So what are you going to be able to stick to? Usually for most people it might be somewhere in the middle. After having their steps, let's say you've got your steps at 10,000, if you go above that to a crazy extent, it might be getting to be a bit hard, bit restrictive, but just inconvenient to do. Therefore, it might be a good idea to add in cardio at that stage. And performance should be considered as well if you want to have a good end result from your phase. So again, like I said, I wouldn't be doing an hour cardio before your session or even after if you've not ate or had like an intra-workout drink. I'd usually try and do it away from it. But yeah, that should be considered as well when deciding should I do more steps or should I do cardio. And yeah, it's just preference, and having a think when you are going to add in either cardio or steps, what's the most logical place to start. For example, if your steps are at 5,000 daily, then it's quite logical putting up to 10,500 before adding in cardio, unless you physically don't have any time to walk. But yeah, just about making the smartest decisions from wherever you're at. So thank you very much for listening to this episode. If you've got any questions or topics you'd like to be covered, then please just send me a message on Instagram and I'll happily consider covering them. And if you did enjoy the episode, please feel free to leave me a rating and review, share this episode in your story, and drop me a follow or subscribe, depending on what platform you're listening to it on. So hope everyone has a great day and a great weekend if you're listening to it on the weekend.